This episode is going to be very different than any other episode up until now. It's actually my first episode where we're going to have a panel discussion. And the focus of the panel, well, I'll introduce the folks on the panel and they're surprised. Put something over your face, guys, so they don't know who you are yet. Okay, so you don't know who they are, but we're going to have a panel discussion. We're going to talk about how leaders go. Oh, come on. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about how leaders can take better care of themselves so they and their teams can better deal with the ever increasing change that we see out there. And I'm so excited to have two of my best friends in the world on the panel. First time ever. We're at 60 something episodes, and they're actually my first repeat guests on the show. So very exciting. So, number one, we have Cait Donovan, who is a speaker, an author, host of Fried the Burnout podcast, where she gets, what is it? Is it 70 trillion downloads a week?
Yes, that's the
Something like
accurate
that.
number. That's
I
the
think it's
accurate
up to
number. Mhm.
70 trillion. And she, by the way, is one of the most no bullshit people that I've ever met. Cait will tell you how it is, whether you like it or not. And the second member of the panel is Owen Fitzpatrick. He is a psychologist, an author, a speaker. He's spoken in over 100 countries. I think you have a new one coming up that you haven't spoken in. Is that true?
I've spoken to people, 100 countries, but like actually professionally, it's been just over 30. But like when I got off the plane in the
Oh,
countries, I did speak to people. It's just, it was like, excuse me, do you know where the toilet is?
okay.
Those kind of,
So I do thousands of speaking engagements a year if we judge it from that. So he has really spoken in over 30 countries. He's host of the Changing Minds podcast. He's a horrible networker, and he's one of my best friends in the world. So Owen Fitzpatrick. Owen, Cait, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
I,
So exciting to do this. And before we dive into the topic, one of the things, guys, I started doing after you did the show, because you were both pretty early guests on the show, is I asked, oh, and I probably should have told you this before so you could think about it, but good. Now you haven't thought about it. You'll give a good, honest answer. My question to each of you, and I'll call on you separately. My question to each of you is, since this is the Better Leadership Team show, what do you believe is the one most important characteristic of a great leadership team? Oh, and you go first.
so the characteristic of a great leadership team would be what I call talent, talent density.
Oh, stop it. He's copying my stuff.
No, no, it would be from my perspective. I think the most important thing would be the ability to collaborate and influence each other effectively. So to inspire each other to be able to work well with each other and to be there for each other. To me, when we talk about a leadership team, that's the most important element.
It's the wrong answer, but it's a really good try. Hey,
Great. Thanks.
I'm going to go with trust.
ooh, that's a good one. No,
I
they were
think
both good ones.
the leadership team characteristic as trust. Owen, you said something within your words that I agree with heavily. And in that trust is part of like everybody knows that somebody's got their backs. It doesn't mean that the whole team has everybody's back, but it means if we're looking at a team of 5 or 6 people, each of those people has another person within the team that's going to support them. There are studies, loads of studies that tell us that when we have that one person on our team, the entire team becomes stronger. So when everybody has that person and everybody can lean into that trust, then we open up the doors of creativity, we have creative problem solving, we have clear and transparent communication, et cetera, et cetera.
Love it. I probably asked that question about 45 times now, and it's amazing that I get different. I've probably gotten 35 different answers.
Mm.
So I guess that tells me it's a pretty good question. So let's dive in. And as I said, we're going to talk about how and why leaders should better take care of themselves so they can take care of their teams and enable their teams to deal with all the change that we deal with all the time. And I actually want to start off with the negative. I want to start off making the case as to how important this is versus, hey, what are we going to need to do? And we'll talk about specific things we need to do. But hey, let me ask you first, and then Owen, I'm going to ask you the same question. What happens? What's the impact if leaders don't prioritize self-care, self-management, what impact does that have on them? What impact does that have on their teams?
So I'm going to go really nerdy with this answer to start off. There are plenty of research studies that let us know that your heart and your brain, the electromagnetic waves that come off your heart and your brain can be measured up to 8 to 10 feet outside of your body. When those things are not resonating with one another. So when you're not caring for yourself and your brain and your heart are going different directions, when your values aren't aligned, when your health isn't taken care of, and there's dissonance within you, that is the energy you are providing your team. And that sounds woo woo a little bit, but it's not. We can literally measure this dissonance in a room. So when you are not caring for yourself, you are literally patient zero, spreading a contagion of stress and dissonance in your team.
And then what's the result of that?
I mean, all of my work surrounds burnout. So I would say eventually everybody burns out. But before we get to burnout, we get a lot of complaining, we get inter-team gossip, we get blame, we get lack of responsibility, we lose trust, lack of creativity. Things just disintegrate. The whole team structure starts to disintegrate.
Oh, and what do you think?
I mean, I think Kate's spot on. The term that I usually use, which is pretty much what you mentioned, Kate, which is emotional contagion. The research shows that whatever you feel, the people around you are likely to feel as well. And all you have to do is go to, a big sporting event and you're around other people and everyone's so excited. Generally, the reason why watching something live like that, surrounded by other people that are all feeling very intensely, is so powerful is because those feelings are contagious. What this then leads to is, as Kate mentioned, it leads to eventually often burnout. But even in the interim, those behaviors that you mentioned, Kate, the complaining, the stressing, the anger, all that sort of stuff, that also plays a big part in influencing what goes on inside our head because we're talking to ourselves constantly anyway. So if you're not communicating with anyone else, you're communicating with yourself. And so what invariably happens is that everyone's talking to themselves and then they're talking to other people. And sometimes what you're saying to yourself when you're stressed is the beginning of what you then start to say to other people. So it's a reflection of what's going on inside your head. So I'm pissed off about something and therefore I take it out on you. This whole expression of taking it out on you. And the more that we fall into the trap of doing that, the more what happens then is that we piss other people off, and which turn then negatively impacts how other people are dealing with. And if we take it back to leadership teams, that means that all of a sudden that's the disintegration of what Kay mentioned, which is trust. And so before you know it, because of what's going on for me, because of how I'm feeling, I'm then communicating that out. And while that might make me feel a little better in the moment, it's there then causing a chain reaction whereby now all of a sudden the leadership team itself starts to go in a negative spiral. And what people don't realize is that we're always going in either a negative spiral or a positive spiral. We're always going in a negative direction or a positive direction. And it really comes down to the decisions that we make as to how we communicate with each other. But Mike, from your perspective, you must have found in coaching great leadership teams and helping empower them that a big part to play isn't just, being able to be strategic about the year and make good decisions. A large part, my guess is, in your experience, is about how they communicate with each other and the fact that they don't just allow themselves to erupt with emotions. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I have a great example of that I was thinking about, as you both were talking, is have a client that I worked with recently, and it's a newer client. And when I say client, it was the CEO and the CEO's direct reports. It was a whole leadership team. I was spending 2 days with them. And I had to pull the CEO aside during the morning break to let him know, to make sure he knew that the look on his face every time he thought someone asked a dumb question or was speaking too long or disagreed with him, that just the look on his face was causing his leadership team to shut down. So I buy that, the woo-woo stuff, Kate, maybe woo-woo, but I buy it, from a vibrational standpoint, but it comes out in sometimes the way people speak. I've seen leaders be really short with their people, not so much because they're angry at their team or an individual person, but they're frustrated with whatever went on last night at home or this morning or whatever it was. or they're feeling tired because they didn't get enough sleep or whatever it is, you know, I'm seeing that come out in anger, come out in frustration, impact the other team. And I've also seen that impact the level of creativity of a leader. And I say CEOs, that's who I work with, but if you're a leader of a team, this impacts you. It impacts creativity because when you're not taking care of yourself and you feel stressed, or even if you're at burnout or approaching burnout, you kind of just want to get the conversation over again. And you have no time for the bullshit of other people and their ideas, which, by the way, is exactly what you need. Or you just trying to get the conversation done. And it impacts the leadership team at such a high level. If a leader is feeling negative, by the time it cascades down to everybody else, they're 5x more negative and beaten down than the leader is.
To me, there's one thing that I just wanted to mention. I want to get both your perspectives on this. So a lot of times we talk about, the problem is stress, or in your case, Kate, you'd be working with people, the problem is burnout. And we act as if this is the end result. So you go into stress or you end up burnt out, right? And it's almost like that's the enemy. But to me, one of the interesting bits of research in the area of neuroscience is this notion of affective realism. And affective realism is the notion that whatever we're feeling dictates and determines how we experience the world. So, we joke around about being hangry, right? I'm angry when I'm hungry, or tangry. I'm angry when I'm tired. I haven't slept, as you mentioned, Mike. Or I'm tanxious. I'm anxious because I haven't slept and I'm starting to overthink. But it's the reality, the way in which we internalize experiences is largely influenced by the biological way in which we're feeling at this moment in time. So I think a big mistake a lot of people make is they go, oh, we need to cure stress. We need to figure out how to change the way, this. And once we've done that, it's great. Not realizing that every single time we're in that state, we're also forming beliefs. We're also developing an idea of what's going on. So, for me, it's a big part to play is to understand how you experience work when you're feeling one way is a totally different reality than when you're experiencing work when you're stressed or when you're starting to burn out or when you're anxious or worried or fearful of your job. I'd love to hear from either of you about your perspectives on that, especially Kate, when you're dealing with burnt out. How do you see that?
Well, the interesting thing when we started talking about this, I was looking for a research article because it hit me that this was just recent, that there's a study that shows that for every 45 minutes of sleep that a leader doesn't get the night before, there's a drop in the level of psychological safety for their team. So there are actual measurable effects for when a leader does not take care of themselves well. And so right now we're just talking about sleep, but we could talk about a myriad of things. So for every 45 minutes of sleep that a leader doesn't get the night before, the psychological safety of their team drops. I think I was trying to find the exact number, but I couldn't get through the article fast enough, but it drops some like significant percentage. Oh, there it is. For every 45 minutes of sleep debt accumulated as measured by a Whoop fitness tracker, there was an experience of a 5 to 10% decline in performance on tasks requiring mental control the next day, and a 10% drop in psychological safety of the team. I think that what's really important about digging into research like this is that we're not saying that leaders need to be well because we think it's a good idea. Leaders need to take care of themselves because it measurably affects the performance and an ability to be creative and to show up fully at work of their teams.
I think the key element there is it's not even just on that day. So you might
No.
think to yourself, yeah, well, it's one day. I had a bad sleeping day. What are you going to do? But the problem is that the way people experience reality, because of that, they then learn conclusions. So for example, the three of us are working together. I come in, I'm pissed off because I haven't got enough sleep. I then start to, Mike makes a mistake. Immediately, because I'm in that pissed off humor, that mistake I make into a bigger deal than it is. All of a sudden, I start looking and thinking to myself, well, Mike, maybe he doesn't cut it. Maybe he's not good enough. That like all of that is possible for me to do inside my head because I'm in that emotional state. So it's not just in the moment. Okay, the performance is dropped or that. to me, it's also about, okay, so what will that lead to in the future if we're not taking care of ourselves in those ways? Would you agree, Mike?
I would, and I want to get to some of the how to, like, so how do you do it? It's obviously got a big impact. And by the way, I think we can have an interesting discussion for another 2 hours just talking about the impact, right? There's more to say, but I do want to get to how should folks start thinking about it? Because when you think about, all right, how do I take better care of myself so I'm a better me as a leader, and that's going to have this impact on my team, especially for folks that are dealing with a lot of stress right now, which is most leaders. That seems like an overwhelming thing. Like, yeah, of course, I know I need to take care of myself. Okay, smart guy, what do I do? So let me start, Owen, with you. How, and we can get to some very specific tactics, but how should a leader be thinking about this so it doesn't feel like this overwhelming thing that's outside of their control?
Well, the first thing is to recognize, and I mean, you kind of hit on it, recognize what is inside their control. So we all start at mindset. So the mindset is the way in which you think about what's going on. And so there's a number of different mindsets that are important to start to develop or cultivate. One, for instance, is the control mindset or the agency mindset, which is what can I control in this situation? What can I influence in this situation? What's outside of my control? And that's simple. Those three questions, what can I control fully? What is influenceable by me? And then what can't I control or even influence? That's the first port of call, because in that situation, then you know what you're dealing with. But then also the way in which you think about stress, the research shows that when we see stress as something that's going to have a huge negative impact on our physical health, well, it's definitely going to. But when we believe that stress itself can have some benefits, it mitigates a large amount of the damage of stress. So this is what I call a sort of the anti-fragile effect. It's popularized by the work of Alia Crum in the research study she did in the book, The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal. But in a nutshell, the idea is a paradoxical when it's this. If I believe stress is good for me, it's not that it necessarily will be, but it will be a lot less bad for me if I'm experiencing it. So, I mean, I think those are the places we start is that we look, number one, at, okay, so what can I control? What can I influence? And then, what is outside of my control so that I can focus more attention because a lot of stress comes from what we perceive to be, and that important word perceive, is outside of our locus of control. But then also the way in which we even conceptualize stress itself and how we see stress and whether or not we see stress as destroying us or whether we see as stress as a necessary part of growth and improvement and whatnot. That's to me the two places I would start with switching those mindsets.
So what I'm hearing is kind of two different things. One is the mindset around control and how much you're in control of, and the other gets to what you believe. Like, what are your beliefs? Which I know, Owen, is such a big part of what you research and what you're writing about. But one of those beliefs is, what do you believe about stress?
Yeah, and I mean, that's seen as a specific type of mindset, a stress mindset, if you will, right? The research shows that your mindset about even what you're taking in your body, what you're consuming, the food that you're eating, has an impact upon your biology. And the same is true in terms of stress. Your belief about the stress or your mindset about the stress that you're experiencing will dictate. I mean, think about it. Every time you go for a run, every time you go exercise, you're putting your body in a form of stress, but you're interpreting that stress as a good thing, and therefore, it leads to you being able to build muscle. It leads you towards being able to boost your immune system, which is temporarily impacted by it. And I know, Kay, you could go in a lot more depth into that. But for me, the most important thing is that we need to start with the mindset because all the great techniques such as mindfulness and, progressive relaxation, self-hypnosis, visualization, they're terrific. But if you don't get your mindset right, then you're just using them as a bandage every time that you find yourself, getting injured. And what we need to do is we need to start from the perspective of we need to learn how to change the way we experience the world so that the world doesn't impact us as negatively as it potentially can. And then once it actually does get through the mindset, which is our first fortified defense, if you will, that's when we then can utilize the techniques that can help us to deal with the stress in the moment.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's about taking control of the stories we tell ourselves,
Yes,
right?
one could say that, yeah.
There you go. I may have
And
heard
and
somebody say
this
that.
this is where I fight back a little bit not because I think that it's incorrect, but because I think that there's a missing step. So during our most influential period of brain development in our lives, if we experience high levels of stress, trauma, etc., there's loads of things. This is a whole separate episode, but if we experience loads of stressful times during those moments, so we're talking about from ages 0 to between 6 and 9, because everybody develops a little bit differently, but let's just call it 9, then the way that we interpret stress is not just the story that we're telling ourselves, but is also the biological pathway that we've created in our brain based on our experiences. So sometimes, in order to get to the place where we can change our mindsets, we need to understand that our brains developed in a way that made the mindset we have right now possible and then ingrained it deeper over time because we have a confirmation bias, right? So if you grow up in a family where one of your parents is incarcerated and the other one has some sort of substance abuse disorder, the way that your brain starts to interpret the situations around you will be different than the way somebody's brain interprets it that didn't grow up in that scenario. And then you look for the rest of your life for confirmation that the things that you believe are correct. And you form brain grooves and pathways and neuronal pathways that prove to you that you are correct. So changing mindset sounds like an easy task. Change your mind about how you feel about this. But in order to do it, we have to understand that mindset also has a biological component.
So, Kate, how do you impact that? So, if it does have a biological component, what does that mean? What do we do?
If you realize that something is happening and you have a story around it, this is where Owen and I come back together. You have to start proving to yourself that you might be wrong. So you have to try to act differently and get different reactions from people and gather data over time that proves to you that another story might also be true. Another story or belief that is more beneficial to you, that is more useful to you, that helps you and your team. But you have to gather data over time. So for instance, a lot of people that end up burnt out are people pleasers, right? They're going around the world and they're acting in a way to make sure that nobody dislikes them because that makes them feel unsafe when people dislike them. So part of the work that we do with people pleasers is we go around and I say, I want you to disappoint at least one person every day so that you can understand that you can disappoint people, do something that somebody doesn't like, and still be loved, appreciated, accepted, friends with somebody, etc. And the more you do that, and the more you gather information that you can not always abandon yourself for the sake of someone else, and it's going to be okay, the easier it will be for you to adopt the mindset that you don't have to do that.
So, what I'm hearing is it's probably not black and white, do it this way
No.
instead of this way. But sometimes instead of saying, we've got to change our mindset, and therefore then that will change our behavior, you're almost acting your way to the new mindset. You're forcing the behavior first. And if that behavior gives you that return on investment you're looking for, that will change your mindset
Yes.
and reinforce that behavior and create some new habits.
Which
Owen,
is
does
where
that?
Owen and I come together, right? Because Owen
Yeah.
said you have to change your experience. And then, so this is where we come back together.
So for me, just to, I suppose, clarify, because I agree with everything you said, Kate, and I always see that that story isn't, I don't see stories that we tell ourselves as being separate to the biological influences that have happened to us when we're younger. In fact, those stories come as a result. All stories
Right.
come an emotional charge to the story. So, whether or not you grew up and you grew up in a single parent family, or you grew up in very poor circumstances, or you grew up with a silver spoon, you're going to have different stories. Some stories might be a story of entitlement that again has a biological basis in the sense that you're very protected. You had a lot of safe space, you had a lot of psychological safety when you're younger. So I completely agree with all that. For me, the story we tell ourselves is where a lot of it comes down to, because the stories that we tell ourselves is based on the beliefs that we have. And the beliefs that we have are based on the stories we tell ourselves in the moment about the experiences. So as I experience that trauma, it's not just that I go through that trauma when I'm younger. It's that as I go through the trauma, I'm then telling myself a story about what that trauma means. I'm telling myself a story about who I am because of this trauma. I'm telling myself a story because of the exposure I have to the environment that surrounds me. And so then that story becomes a set of beliefs that become convictions for me. And as a result of that, everything I experience through that sort of lens.
Filter.
To me, the reason why your technique or the approach you suggested, I used to years ago do something similar when I'd work with a client. Let's say when I was a therapist, I'd work with a client that had no self-confidence and really wanted to date more. And I brought him out into a shopping mall and I got him to, the game was he was terrified of rejection. He had to go up and his goal was to get rejected by 10 different women. And that was the goal. If he did 10 different women, he would win the game.
By the way, Owen, when you did that, my wife got really pissed. So don't ask me to do that
And
again.
listen, you needed to do it, so it was important. Well, but at least with you, you knew you'd definitely get rejected. But the point of it was that by number 4 or 5, by the 4th or 5th lady
Exactly.
that he approached, he got that experience. But here's the crucial piece. And it's one thing that you mentioned, Kate, and I just think your example isn't just evidence. It's evidence with an emotion. And that's
Mhm.
the reason it's so powerful
Yeah.
is that if I give you data and I give you statistics, again, confirmation bias kicks in, internalizes that in some way. But when you get something that's experiential, like you described in your case, there's something about that that really influences the story. I always talk about,
Mm.
if you want to change beliefs at a deep level, it isn't, and switching mindset, I'll just push back a little on that. Starting the process of asking the question, what can I control? What can I influence? And what's outside of my control? That's a good start,
Yeah.
as is the way we think about stress. But to actually change your overarching beliefs, 100%, we need to go deeper. For me, when we go deeper, we look at the stories that we're telling ourselves, which we both discussed. We're on the same page. We look at the community we surround ourselves with, which is the people, and this is the internal echo chambers as well as the external in the real world. Who are we around? Because that's going to influence the beliefs we have. All you got to do is look at conspiracy theory or politics to figure that out. And then exactly what you said and what you drew attention to there, Mike, is the actions we take. Self-perception theory. We look to what we're doing as a way to be able to figure out who we are. And so to me, there's the magic in the example you gave, Kate, is really around this notion that if we want to make changes, we can't just rely on logically going, oh, switch your mindset. Oh, you know what you need to do? You need to be more positive. You know what you need to do, Mike? You're very stressed. You need to relax. As if Mike's going to go, oh, brilliant.
It
Oh
sounds
my
like one of
goodness.
your
Yeah,
guru videos, Owen.
that's it. Yeah, exactly. That's the
Yeah.
problem. And to me, there's that depth, which I love the example you gave, Kate, because to me, that's the depth that's missing so often. Everyone could preach all these ideas, but I'm sick and tired of hearing common sense masquerading as, oh, this is a genius insight, like just do
Right.
this. But it's not that simple. You need to
Exactly.
understand how your beliefs about the world are formed and how to do something about them.
Yeah.
Owen, I want to drill into one of the things you said around community, because what I think of, there's the component of mindset and behavior and the whole psychological component of it. But I also think there is the pragmatic piece of, I know in my own life, one of the most important things I've done from a self-leadership, self-care standpoint is surround myself with the right people. And let me be more specific about what I mean by that. And by the way, part of it is the two of you and the whole
Well, we know.
community. Yeah. Remember how screwed up I was before you guys? But really, there are many times in my life when, I'll say this at the risk of it sounding kind of horrible, and but because it might, but there have been a lot of times in my life where I had to kind of upgrade my neighborhood, where I was spending, who was it that said, was it Jim Rohn? You're the average of the
5
5
people.
people you spend the most time with.
Mm.
And those 5 people are not always the right people for me. So I think there's such a big part of this for me in my life has been surrounding myself with the right people, which meant, from a work team standpoint, from a friend standpoint, from I've had a coach for many years that I just talked to this morning who has changed my life. Mastermind groups like the one that we have. I have a mastermind group of coaches. I have a mastermind group I meet with once a month. That's 12 different CEOs. We all help each other. And frankly, probably most importantly, And I'm not only saying this because she's in another room somewhere and maybe listening in, but most importantly is my wife. Like
Yeah.
I've been on this entrepreneurial journey since 2004. I had, regular jobs for 17 years before that. But I've been on this entrepreneurial journey since 2004, and I never would have changed that. It's the smartest move I ever made to start my own business, but it's been a roller coaster ride like I thought I'd never see in my life. And thankfully, the last 7 or 8 have been, you know, pretty good, going uphill. But man, it was a struggle for a long time. And if I didn't have an incredibly supportive spouse who said, instead of go get a friggin' job and cut the crap, said, we're going to figure this out. You're doing the right thing. I'll do this. You'll do that. We'll get the kids to do this. That to me, more than anything else, surrounding myself with the right people is what allowed me to stay sane and stay at not so much stay sane, but stay at my best throughout all of this to create what I've created and have the impact on my clients that I'm able to have. So that's just the part I wanted to drill into a little bit as well.
So for me, I mean, everything you're saying makes a lot of sense, and the people you surround yourself with. I think there's one mistake people make whenever they hear this. So, we know from the research that the people that we spend our time around, we tend to take on board the same kind of views as them as well. Not just in forms like groupthink, where everyone starts to get on the same page about specific decisions, but in general, we're very much influenced by other people. Even mimetic desire is this notion that when we look at other people, if you're in a building with lots of people, for example, I'm in a building with lots of people with lots of dogs, it's making myself and my partner, crave dogs more than ever. So we're like, the more you see it, the more you want it. But the missing piece that I think is really important is certainly in the area that I've been in for years, is this notion of being positive, right? And I think there's an important distinction to be made between being positive and being supportive. So being positive is you can do this, you're wonderful. And certainly you do not want to be in a community where people are like negative all the time. But I think there's an extreme that's, I suppose, misunderstood on both sides. So if you surround yourself with people all the time and they're like moaning and complaining and whining and whinging, definitely a terrible group to be part of. If you're in a group though, and everyone's super positive all the time, that's also not necessarily a useful group to be a part of because again, you might be protected from, how awful things are at the outside, but then you develop and cultivate this sort of a denial to a degree of what's going on. And to me, the best groups are the ones where, number one, you're looking at people that make you feel supported and empower you, but do so in different ways, that you're getting feedback from them. And you've built a sense of, as Cait, you mentioned at the beginning, trust to the point where you're getting feedback that helps you to become better, that challenges you, that you're challenged by each other, and that it's not always easy, and that you are able to, give feedback to each other in that way. And to me, that's a really important distinction. I think so many people are thinking, oh, I just need to get all the negative people out of my life. Well, not necessarily. You just need to get the kind of people that are going to keep helping you to get better and feel good and feel supported and all that. And I just think that's an important piece of the community is the community we surround ourselves with should be a community that helps us to continuously get better. And my guess is, Mike, Angela is not always turning around going, you don't wake up every morning and Angela goes, oh my goodness, Mike, you're the greatest. You're my hero. You're so perfect in every single way. I know I don't have that experience, but I have a wonderful relationship whereby I feel better as a result of it. So my guess is, and same for you, Cait, is that it's not just this, you're so great, you're so wonderful, hearing what we want to hear. A large part of it is people that believe in our potential and that are helping us to get there in whatever way they can. Would that resonate with you, Cait? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the most important thing that we need to talk about at this juncture is the fact that as the leader, when you're forming a team, your team is one thing, and the people you choose to surround yourself with, your community, is another. We need people to know that these are two different groups of people. One of the biggest mistakes I see leaders make in their own wellness journeys is assuming that because they're in the lead, they're supposed to be able to be in charge of everything all the time and not need any help. You need a community outside of the team of the people that you're building in order to support you so that you can support the team of people that you're building. These two groups, these are two separate groups. And you are not supposed to do it alone, even though there is this strange belief that, well, I have this CEO title or this CFO title or CHRO title, that now that I'm up here, I should have all of the answers. That's why they put me here. And it's like, no, no, no. Slow down, restructure your community so that you have the support that you need, and then use that support to support your team. I think that separation needs to be made.
That's a great point. I want to shift gears for a couple minutes. And Cait, I want to ask you, because with your background, you may have the most true knowledge and research behind this, but we've been talking about kind of the mental and the emotional component of all this. But there's an important physical component of this, whether it's exercise or eating right or sleep. Help us out with that. What should leaders be thinking about from a physical component, knowing it may be very different for different people? How should we be thinking of that and how that impacts us and the actions we ought to take?
Going back to the study I mentioned before, the first thing we're thinking about is sleep quality, and sleep length. If you are going to work on nothing else, this is the thing you work on first. After that, we go to water. How much water are you drinking? Are you getting enough liquids in? Are you Good
This,
job, everybody.
this,
Cheers.
hold on.
I have electrolytes.
This is vodka, but
That makes a
I,
lot of sense, actually, Mike. Sorry,
yeah,
continue.
everything is clear now, including the vodka. So we're going sleep, we're going water, then we're going movement. Now, a lot of people would have put food ahead of this, but movement comes next in my book. Then comes food. So, but by movement, I don't necessarily mean exercise. This depends on your daily life, how you're living, what your stress levels are, etc. Like some people just need to be not at their desks so often. It's the sitting all day is not, we can't fix the sitting all day by going for a 5K run in the morning. A 5K run is only going to take you a half hour. That does not do anything for the fact that you're sitting at your desk 9 hours a day. I would rather see you walk in the middle of the day or get up from your chair every 30 to 40 minutes than run in the morning and then sit all day long. So we're not talking about necessarily exercise. We're talking about NEAT, like non-exercise activity thermogenesis, this idea that being so stagnant physically is a massive issue. And then we move on to food after that. But if somebody's going to start, I want sleep first. Get your sleep going first. You cannot do anything if you're not sleeping well, because during your sleep, your body's job while you're sleeping is to basically do housekeeping. It goes into your brain and cleans up all your metabolic toxins from all the thoughts and work that you did during the day. It goes into your gut and does the same thing with your food and absorbs the nutrients that you need and gets rid of the ones that you don't. And you're basically sorting through and cleaning things out. If you don't do that and things don't get cleaned out, you end up ill. Bottom line. If you do that well, but then you don't drink enough water to keep everything moving through, you're still ending up ill. So if somebody does nothing else after this episode but improve their sleep hygiene and wake up and drink 16 ounces of water first thing before they do anything else, if that's all they do, I would be satisfied.
love it. Love it. So what I want to do, I feel like we could probably make this a 2-hour episode, and I want to, I'll save room for us doing another one, but I want to go kind of one round through all of us as to, we've talked about the cost of not taking care and leaders not taking care of themselves. We've talked about a couple of different perspectives, mindset and attitude, behaving your way into it, surrounding yourself with the right people. We've talked about some different perspectives on how leaders should think about it. What I want to do now, and Owen, start with you, is if leaders are going to leave here with one specific action they should take, what's the one action a leader should take?
prioritizing what matters most. And I want to dig into that a bit because it's kind of a non-answer answer, if you will. And Kate says, sleep number one, drink water number two, move number three, and eat healthy number four, let's say. Bottom line is all of those are critically important. Again, if sleep is the most important, sleep is the most important. But the reality is that the big problems that leaders are having is they're too busy managing and they're not busy leading. And I mean, they're too busy not just managing their team, they're too busy managing themselves. I'm managing myself. I've got my to-do list. I've got my projects. I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. Oh, here I need to go here, there, and everywhere. Even managing in terms of what you alluded to, Kay, is the exercise. I'm managing to do my 5K in the morning. I'm managing to do my boot camp or whatever. And to me, leading is a different story. When we talk about leading a team, we're talking about coaching people. We're talking empowering people. We're talking about believing in the potential of people. We're talking about being able to inspire people to be the greatest they could be, to be able to build great leadership teams, AKA, Mike Goldman's expertise. That's what great leaders do. But great leaders internally, like self-leadership, is not just about managing yourself. It's about inspiring yourself, influencing yourself. It's about figuring out what do you need to be the very best that you can be. And a large part of that is being able to learn to master the fundamentals, the sleep, the nutrition, the movement, the water, right? The hydration. They're the fundamentals, right? We also need to be able to make sure that we're clear of exactly where we're going. We need to know the direction we're going in. We need to understand our team. We need to be able to know what time and energy requirements are necessary for us that week. And what are we going to do for breaks? We need to figure out our rest. And that's the one thing that's never talked about is taking breaks. It's almost like it's seen not a million miles away from the way you were describing it, Kate. It's like, oh, well, I don't need to take breaks or, well, yeah, breaks are a luxury. Breaks are a necessity. And I'm talking every hour getting a break. I'm talking about being able to switch off when you come home from the office. And this isn't, again, I'm not making a play for self-care. I'm making a play for high performance. And that's what people forget is that people are a lot of leaders are thinking high performance, work, 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 because that's the story that is pervaded in our society. But actually, if you want to be a high performer, you need to lead yourself by prioritizing the most important things that gets you into the best state possible. You need to prioritize your team when you want to lead them effectively as well. And so I think the big one action that people need to take or leaders need to take in order for them to be able to handle the adversity that they're facing, the changes that they're facing, the challenges they're facing, is they need to start to prioritize what they're doing for themselves, the fundamentals that Kate mentioned, as well as being able to ensure that they're carving time out to take time to rejuvenate, to replenish themselves so they can fire on all cylinders. Our brain works with it. There's the ultradian rhythm, whereby on a regular basis, we get peaks and troughs of our attention and energy. And somehow we expect that we can go through 6 meetings in a row, 1 hour each, with no break, going from Zoom to Zoom or meeting room to meeting room. And then we wonder why, oh, I was off today. Maybe I didn't sleep right. Maybe I didn't, or maybe you just didn't take a break. And maybe it's a combination of those factors. But when we could start to prioritize the things that matter like that, we could start to become more empowered leaders because we're leading ourselves better. We're leading others too.
Oh, and I want to put a finer point on, or have you put a finer point on what you just said, getting real specific. So when a leader, let's literally picture a leader, finishes listening or watching this podcast, and then they're going to go do something. So when you say prioritize, is it literally, should they get a sheet of paper out and say, priority number one is I need to get more sleep. Priority number two is I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow. Like, I want to get really specific.
Yeah.
What should they do?
I mean, just to give you an example, because this is not the only thing they could do. And Kate's going to come up with another brilliant example, I'm sure. But in a nutshell, yeah, identify the most important priorities. And the priorities are usually, what are you not doing? So out of what you've heard today from us, what we've said, what is it that deep down in your head, you're saying to yourself, oh shit, I don't do that, right? Whatever that is, whatever got the little voice inside your head, that's the thing you probably put in your priorities. But then, and this is the important point, step two, schedule it. It's not enough to go, oh, now I've got my priority list. Okay, great. Well done. Fantastic. Schedule it. Put it in your calendar. Make it mandatory and give yourself, I don't know, 10 days, 20 days that no matter what, even if you don't feel any different at all, you're going to keep doing it. You're going to keep drinking those 2 liters of water a day or 3 liters of water a day. You're going to keep taking those 2 glasses as soon as you wake up, and you're going to do that for the, but it's part of your schedule. It's a deal breaker. It's going to happen no matter what. And so step one, identify the priorities based upon what you're not doing that you heard your little voice say. And then second of all, put it in your calendar. That'd be my probably, first attempt at giving you an action to take.
Excellent. Cait, what do you think? What's the first thing people should do after this podcast to take action?
Sleep.
That's it. Just
Yep.
silence after. I think Cait went to sleep after she said sleep.
No, I left that there like that on purpose. I think that we have this culture that really, mm, I'm making up words now, machofies not sleeping. Like I only need 4 hours and I only need 5 hours. Like, please shut up and go to bed. Figure out how to improve your sleep. That's it. So if that means that maybe you're going to get a Whoop band or an Aura ring or some sort of tracker to help you figure out where you are so that you can work on something and watch it improve. But if your sleep is affecting the productivity of you and then your team, and then the psychological safety of you and then your team, your sleep is priority number 1. Get your sleep going. That's it.
A lot of people are sleeping on sleep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, Owen, that was terrible.
We could edit that out, I think. Let's
No editing.
keep,
Don't
keep,
edit
it, keep,
pun.
keep that in. Don't edit it out. We need to embarrass
Thanks.
Owen.
What do you think, Mike?
Well, it may not matter because right now everybody went to sleep. So they're not listening to the rest of this episode. So I love those ideas. I always go to the people component, right? And I think a great compliment to what both of you said is I would encourage people to find one or more accountability partners.
Mm.
And if you've got one, great. Maybe you just need to use that person more. Maybe you need to find somebody else. Maybe you need to create a little mastermind group, of folks. But I think finding an accountability partner and using that accountability partner, whether it's prioritizing exercise or whether it's figuring out, doing some research on how to get more sleep, whether it's changing your language. Because when I thought of Cait, when you said, people brag, oh, I only need 4 hours sleep. People always, and by the way, I fall into this trap. People like to brag about how busy they are.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good thing. I'm so busy. I don't know. It's like, shut the hell up. Like,
Mhm.
you're busy because you're too busy because you're not managing what you need to do in the right way. And sometimes, Owen, to your point earlier, those people around you are not just ones say, oh, great idea, you're wonderful. Sometimes it's people that say, shut the F up. You're saying this too much. You're talking yourself into this. You need to think about it this way. But I think not instead of, in addition to prioritizing and sleep, if you could find one or more other people who could help hold you accountable, kick you in the ass when you need it, pat you on the back when you need it. And by the way, you can do the same for them, because here's the other thing is I have found what one of the things, if not the thing, that makes me feel best, even when I feel like everything around me is crap. What makes me feel best is helping someone else. And I know that sounds, like, it's such a wonder, but it's true. Like, when we're of service to other people, we feel better. So having an accountability partner is not only for you, it's for that other person. And that's going to bring you up.
I feel, Mike, I'm similar whenever, in terms of what makes me feel best is when you help me as well. So you help somebody else, makes you feel good. You helping me makes me feel good. So it's a win approach.
At some point, I'll see if I can actually be of some help. We'll see if that
One
works.
day, we can
One
always
day.
hope.
Well, this was pretty cool. I like doing this. We got to do this again. There's so much more to talk about. But hey, thank you guys for doing this. And I always say, if you want a great company, you need a great leadership team. If you want a great leadership team, you better know how to lead yourself. So I hope the three of us had helped you all get I'm not supposed to say you all. I'm talking to one person, right? When you're on a
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
So I hope it's helped you, not you all. I care about the rest of you, but you, I hope it's helped you better lead yourself so you can be a better leader. Cait, Owen, this is awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I had so much fun on that episode. I forgot to share with you how to get in touch with Owen and Cait if you want to find out more about them. I normally ask that at the end of the episode, but I was having so much fun, I forgot. So, anyway, here it is. If you want to get in touch with Cait, go to fried the burnout podcast.com, all one word. That's fried the burnout podcast.com. To find out more about Owen, go to owenfitzpatrick.com. Or if you want to see a video of the first episode of season 5 of his Changing Minds podcast, go to video.owenfitzpatrick.com. There you go. Find out more about them. They're both great.